Morning at NTV.
Morning at NTV. We are glad to be serving you from wherever you are watching us. Today we are in Kampala. A lot of things are making news in Kampala. One of those is the issue of markets in Kampala. Ownership, leadership, movement of vendors. We want to understand what the presidential directives mean to the market vendors and the leadership, and how should it be handled. Today we are with the Lord Mayor of Kampala, Mayor Erias Lukwago, to try and understand how should this issue be resolved, because it has created a lot of talk on the streets among the vendors, the leadership of Kampala, and other people. Lord Mayor, the issue of markets, the president came up with several directives. Among them is suspending the leadership of these markets. How should it be conducted so that the vendors can benefit from this initiative?
One, we have to go back to the basics in the first place. Markets ideally should be for the urban poor. But now they have turned out to be gold mines for some few individuals who have connections with the government. And this has been the practice for so many years, since the days of the Basajja Balabas, when they were given management contracts, when subsequently they got leases over St. Kudembe, Nakasero, the Kanumujenis. You remember those scandals? And to the extent that they were even rewarded for that kind of fraudulent conduct, where they were given compensation of Basajja Balaba was over 160 billion, and the Kanumujenyi 40-something billion, and a couple of others, which was really out of the ordinary. And then thereafter, even the individuals who were brought on board all came from State House. You recall how Kayongo also came up with this rower in St. Kudembe, and at that time he was the advisor to the president. He registered an association which exclusively belonged to him anyway. It didn't belong to the vendors. So bottom line, we have had people who have alienated the markets and took them as personal property. And General Museveni actually is in charge of this. He directs who should own which market, who should manage which market, which I find quite irregular, and it is wrong. The other thing is about going back to the law. We need to revisit the law, because everything starts with the regulatory framework. Right now, it is shrouded in a mystery. We had the legislation in place which is archaic. It was enacted way back in 1942 when we still had the colonial hegemony. It was an ordinance at that time, and it's out of date. Since that time, since independence, it has never been amended. And the way it was structured was that all markets should be first and foremost established by municipal authorities, especially here in Kampala and some urban areas. They should be controlled and managed by those urban authorities. A latitude was created for some areas where management contracts or franchise could be given some individual entities. But for the case of Kampala and some cities like Mbarara and Gulu and others, they said exclusively municipal authorities. But where we are today, that law has been overtaken by events. We have 86 markets in Kampala, but only 16 were established by KCC, and even some of those 16 have since been leased out or sold out, rather sold off, like St. Kudembe, Kiseka, Nakasero, and others. So those which are now in our contracts KCC are just very few, a handful. So that is another challenge. In 2001, there was a bill that was brought before Parliament by a workers' MP. And it was processed and passed early this year, to be exact, on 15th of February. Unfortunately, since then, it has been lying on Mr. Museveni's table. It has never been assented to. Can you imagine? Since February. But we said Mr. Museveni was quick to sign into law the Computer Misuse Act because he had particular interest in it, and some other legislations. But this one, vital as it is, because we feel it's a very critical instrument that would help us regulate the markets, help us sort out the mess in the markets. He's reluctant to sign it into law. You ask the reason, the motive, why? Now, the latest we are getting from State House, he has refused totally to sign it. He says he's returning it back to Parliament. He's opposed to particular clauses, specifically Clause 20, which vests power to establish the leadership of markets in the body of the vendors. He said vendors, they cannot manage markets, that now we should go back to the system where markets are directly managed by KCCA staff. And we are, over the years, we have found that one as untenable, because himself, in many of his documents, presidential directives, he has pointed out this. In the in the late 2000s, when they came up with a policy, I think it was 2009 to 2010, when he was saying KCCA could no longer be trusted with the public assets. He is the one who said, no. We can't allow these people in the KCCA to mess up these facilities. We can't allow take them control. And he directed the then Minister for Local Government, Adolf Mwesige, to help vendors organize themselves into associations to manage these markets. That's how we got Sirowa and other associations in Nakasero, Chiseka, and the Saudiako and others, which eventually got leases. It was upon a directive from President Museveni saying, no. KCCA cannot be trusted to hold these facilities, let alone manage them, because they couldn't keep the titles. And you can imagine, it is the same person who is now turning around and say, he doesn't want the vendors to be in charge of these markets. So you ask which is which. So this gambling, this fudging with the public assets, of course rooted in some kind of, I don't want to use a very strong word, but of course there are people who are trying to benefit from it. So we are is at the root of all these problems we are facing in the markets. So we are asking Mr. Museveni, please sign into law that bill, the markets bill. Please, General Kaguta Museveni, sign into law the bill that was passed by Parliament, and let the markets be managed by the vendors' leadership, because the provision is to the effect that there shall be a body of leaders constituted by the vendors themselves with the specific titles: chairman, vice chairman, treasurer, one in welfare, one in charge of security, and many others. There are quite many, and the representatives of the authorities like a KCCA. And if it's a private market, a representative of the landlord, the owner. That is the order. That's the way to go. But he's opposed to that idea. So if you want to take there to have KCCA directly manage this, then you are compounding up the mess. Already he issued a directive for the arrest of the former director, gender, in the KCCA. The former director. And a couple of others, the deputy director, for the director, and some officials of KCCA. They are before the anti-corruption court. Reason, they allocated themselves stalls, lockups, they are involved in all sorts of scandals and so on and so forth. In this mess there is. So where are you going to get angels in KCCA to repress these market leaders and take charge of this market and manage them efficiently and effectively? So the checks and balances we should be having. The markets be led by a body of leadership established or constituted by the vendors themselves through elections, because it provides for that mechanism. And the tenure, by the way, is 3 years. And then in KCCA, we play a regulatory role.
Lord Mayor, we want to understand, in all this confusion that seems to be happening, where does it leave the market vendors? Because the other day you met them, a section of Kampala leaders and some vendors, but there was a disagreement on where they should be resettled now. Where does the vendor benefit in all this confusion?
I really sympathize with the vendors because they are on the receiving end of this crisis, of these maneuvers. They are just on the receiving end because they are getting presidential directive one after another. The one which brings Kayongo and taking him away, Susan guarding him with SFC, and tomorrow she's arrested. And then now they are waiting. They are at a loss as to what is going to happen next. The reason we called this emergency meeting and said, look here, there is a vacuum now, there is a void. Who is in charge of these markets there? All these markets now are leaderless because all the leaderships were disbanded by that presidential directive. So now we want to create interim leaders. We want rather to put in place interim leaders for the time being, as we await that particular legislation to come. And that's why we are pushing for the expeditious processing of that particular instrument. We want that law passed so that we have it implemented. But my worry is that if it is returned to Parliament, it's going to be worse because we are going to have this crisis deepening. Why? You will have no control in the markets. Yes, we are talking about creating interim leaderships, but those will be now appointed by KCCA. How about now the role of the vendors themselves? It's going to be difficult, like you are asking. In this whole confusion, in this matrix, how are they factored in? How do they come in? It's a real maze, confusion. So that is the challenge we are facing. And the other thing I wanted also to mention, related to that, the directive that we should have 2 markets constructed in each and every division, that is laudable. Indeed, it resonates with our earlier resolutions. It rhymes with our earlier resolution as KCCA, because we had the council, we promoted the proposal which was embraced by the councillors that we should have at least a market in each and every division. You'll be shocked. Kawempe Makinde division has no single known market because, yes, you can say Usafi, but Usafi is largely in Central. It's on the borderline. A whole division within no well-established market. The same applies to Rubaga and many others. Actually, there is no single market that meets the national standards in Kampala here. The one you can speak of, which is a multiple market, that's Wandegeya. But you can also see the problems with it, we have with that, associated with it, because the way it was designed, structured, it's more or less like an arcade. It's not the standard of the multiple markets and agriculture improvement markets. That project, which was funded by Africa Development Bank, that is not the standard you see in Wandegeya. Busega, we have failed to finish it because there is no money. So at a time when Mr. Museveni is making a directive that we should have at least 2 markets in each and every division, good as it is, it's not followed up by action because we must have funds. Our budget has been slashed. You can see now the contradiction. The budget initially, the current budget for this financial year is 470. But in the next financial year, we are now in this new budget cycle. We have gotten the MTF ceilings. It has been slashed to 375. But again, ironically, they are flirting with the idea of purchasing Mr. Bosco Muwonge's land, 10-acre land in Kisenyi, at a whooping sum of $100 million that for purposes of creating workspaces there. $100 million, which translates into 380 billion Uganda shillings. You can imagine. It even surpasses our budget. Our budget is 375. But now this one is over 380 billion. You can imagine on the purchasing land, 10 acres, each acre 10 million. That is outrageous. It is scandalous. Now we are looking for money to construct markets. They are diverting money elsewhere into useless things. So we are saying, please, let's align our priorities well today the targets we have in this country. Yeah.
Lord Mayor, we can't exhaust the issue of markets in Kampala right now, but there are other issues that are pressing Ugandans, especially the city dwellers. The issue of roads. We've seen a couple of roads. I want to start from this I don't know if this is Lubaga division, but the road, for example, from Sentema Road, that is from Mengo going to Sentema, you go to Industrial Division where you would expect that there's a lot of activity that is bringing in income for the city. What is happening to the roads, and is KCC in charge of renovating some of these roads because they seem to be in terrible condition?
We have a dual mandate, KCC and the UNRA. Our counterparts in the national government are well facilitated, UNRA. But for our case, we are just getting peanuts. Again, you will accuse me of lamenting, but I'm telling you the state of affairs in the city. And the little we were supposed to get from our local budget has also been scrapped, because in the budget framework paper we have right now for the next financial year, we're supposed to have 78 billion towards the construction of roads. The whole vote has been taken away. Can you imagine? We are left with only road fund, which is just for maintenance of roads, of only 26 billion. But 78 billion for construction of roads has been taken away. You can imagine. Now, after haggling and hassling and whatnot, finally they have promised, Ramadan Gobi has promised that they are going to give us at least 10 billion. And again, we have another tenant problem. 10 billion, I was telling colleagues in State Hall. Again, we have an internal problem. The unity cost, which is over-inflated. So inflated. A kilometer in Kampala costs 10 billion. Can you imagine? All these roads you're seeing, Acacia Avenue, Rukuli Nanganda, Ntinda Fletcher Road, that Fletcher Road, Ntinda Nakawa Road, all these roads you see, a unity cost is 10 billion. 10 billion. We have 2,110 kilometers of the road network in Kampala. But the tarmacked one is less, it's 30%. I've mentioned this time and again, just to hammer the point home, so people appreciate, so that you all appreciate the crisis we have in this country. It's only 30%, roughly 620. It was originally 616 kilometers. So you can imagine now the crisis. And now the money we are getting is just a drop in the ocean. And we are entirely relying now on donor funds. At least World Bank, we have had those interventions for a couple of roads that have been constructed under KIDIP, Kampala Institutional and Infrastructure Development Projects, and some drainage channels like Rubiji and Nakamiro, where there's some work in progress, though we are not satisfied with the performance of the contractor. But now coming back to these other ones, it's largely the ADB now. The small facelift you are going to see, or improvement you are going to see, is courtesy of 3 donor agencies. World Bank, not donor actually, because these are loans. Yeah. World Bank has given us that loan, some of the roads you have seen in Kampala. ADB, the roads I'm going to talk about here, and then JICA, that flyover you see. Though again it's another mess. You've seen the clutter they are putting around the clock tower. Oh my God. The other day I was asking the Japanese ambassador here and the head of JICA that please, these people who designed all this, where have you seen this in the NS city? Where have you seen it? Because they gave us some loan for signalization of junctions, which we really appreciate, and we are going to do that very soon. Where have you seen that? It has not happened anywhere. So anyway, that is the small interventions that is being made. For ADB, there are roads that have been lined up. You have talked about Sentema, it's one of them. Salama Road, it's another road. We're also going to widen Kasubi Namungona Road so that it's also dual lane. And also a number of roads in industry area. Portobello Road has also to be widened, and many others in Rubaga division here. There is a Suna Road, Suna 1, Suna 2, and a couple of others. There are quite a number of roads that are going to be reconstructed. But again, challenge is the unit cost is high. The unit cost is very, very high. That is ADB loan. We are struggling to do that. Secondly, we have had issues of, again, corruption coming in. The IGG had even to come in, Madam Betty Kamia, to stop the construction of Salama Road. People want the road constructed. A contract is awarded. But again, there are complaints that people are making kickbacks out of this. Then the IGG came in. It had to bring in the intervention of World Bank to say, please, as you investigate those allegations of corruption, let the construction proceed. So those are some of the challenges we are facing. And now, again, there is another challenge. The idea that came up and said, now, how do we get mass interventions in the reconstruction of roads? How do we get funds now? A contract, facility was sourced from UK. That is the agreement with the Collins. And they said, now massive construction of all these roads in Kampala. It has to be a loan. What do we have now, just as I conclude, we have hit almost the ceiling of our debt portfolio, which is now beyond 50% of our GDP, 80 trillion. 80 trillion now. To add on this loan again with the Collins of UK to construct these roads, it's a nightmare.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, for shedding some light on the issues that are happening in Kampala. We don't have a lot of time. We would have loved to continue the conversation with the Lord Mayor, but we can't. For me and Chris, Priscilla, and other team members coming from Lubaga, I am Juma Kiria. Thank you for watching NTV, and tomorrow morning at NTV returns.